Hi everyone, Donna Embry, founder of Unified Medicine Institute, which is basically a research body that proves what it's like to be an identical twin. And so we've been all around the world. We've focused on all different types of diagnostics, providing practitioner support for every background in medicine that you could possibly think of. And the thing that we're constantly bringing people back to is the design of the body. Now, if you look at your family system, oh, and by the way, I'm going to wear a hat and sunglasses because of my sensory difference. Okay? I've had several near-death experiences, and I have been lucid dreaming since, well, my first memory is 3 years old. I am the middle of 3 sisters, and we are all born in the mystic days of March. All 3 of us. Now, many of you know that our older sister transitioned in 2007. And we've been in complete contact with her ever since. And this is something that identical twins don't really talk about. My identical twin sister and I have never spoken about it. We've just communicated as if everybody knew and intervening for people who didn't know. And as we've moved through the ascension cycle of our life, we hit our 60th year this year. Anyone born in the year 1962 has humanitarian code. And how do we know that? Well, we understand the fractal world, which means the flow systems, the multidimensional aspect that we are. And as we begin to open our sensory system to this, we begin to participate in revelation. Okay? Tibetan bowl. And this one came during our service in Boulder, Colorado. Upon returning from international, we chose to bring our healthcare structure back to Colorado. And in doing that, we knew that I was going to bring the next level of family medicine, because that's my specialty, has been since 1987. That's when I first got involved with the FDA on a deeper level. We are already sovereign. Sovereignty requires opening the spine, though. This is July 15th, 2022. And those of you that have been code writers for a while, you certified in bioenergetic medicine. You've been doing frequency testing all along. But when we talk about frequency, we're talking about spin rate. And no 2 substances on the planet have the same vibrational spin. And the body is so intelligent, it understands everything. And as we tap the body, when we have the human hologram maps, which help us to understand that the body is an orb. And when I do this, people say, oh, you mean aura? You mean chakras? Well, yeah, but how do those fit with the physical body. And so to be an identical twin, we actually know how to go multidimensional, how to be able to go from a whole body to the systems, to the organs, to the tissue, to the cells, to the organelles, to the atoms and electrons, and then to the wave, the sine wave, because everything is a wave, and it's all about flow. And so the way that the light moves through individuals is uniquely individual based in their 5 elemental structure. So in our 3rd medical certification, the 3rd level, we talk about the organelles. We talk about the mitochondria. We talk about the way that the body, is moving from a thought to an action to this sharing of DNA. And then what happens after that? And we begin to look at everything looks like a staff and a circle. Everything does. You can see that at the root of everything. So a circle is female, the curves are female, the straight line is male. Does that mean that just men have? No, we all have both. Just think about how you were conceived. Sperm, ovum, right? Electromagnetic attraction and the ability to penetrate through the membrane. And so you have to have the right enzymes for that. In order for conception to take place and to do it in a way where we're actually leaving the world better than we found it, we need to clean up our own genetic material first. And everybody's in position to do this. If you look at me and my siblings and you begin to laugh and look at the symbology of words, it's because you understand the 5 books of Moses are related to what? To other stories, other allegorical stories like the myths. It all connects, the Bible, everything, it's all connected. Any of the religious books are based in the 5 principles of light, but then as you read through the book, you see the use of the miasm, the shadow, from people who are trying to interpret it from their head. And the head has to be grounded through the spine. This is the sword right here, and here's the stone. And the stone is the thymus gland. The thymus gland has to be activated. This is the emerald forest right here. And it becomes this spring green color when the threefold flame returns. And there's 3 aspects: wisdom, love, and power. Love, wisdom, power. Love is red, the color of a rose. It's connected to the water element. Power, words, blue, the throat. Wisdom, gold. This is the golden age, the solar plexus. It's the vertical integration and the opening up of your kundalini. So if you look at the medical caduceus, that is the symbol of the sword and the stone. And you've got 2 snakes rising up and they're kissing noses. But that has to do with the left and the right side. And if you actually understand the human hologram, you understand that the body is less than 1% physical. Yes, there is a bridge between science and spirit. And to understand science, I mean, this is basic 101, pre-med, is in order to understand what's backing a study, you need to get to the intention. And how do you do that? Well, you read through the study. I lost so many interns who did not know how to stay on the path to the core because they have no clue about how to square words to truth, and truth is the North Pole. Shadow is the South Pole. Positive, negative. Female is negative. So what is the shadow? The shadow is fertility. It's women take whatever you plant in them and they multiply it. And especially if they're mystic women. And so when 3 women come in during the 26,000 ending to the precession of the equinoxes, we do it intentionally. And we actually know that we're bringing true love. Because the tighter your DNA, the stronger the electromagnetism and the stronger the connection to the multi-dimension. This is the Akashic record right here, if you've heard of the Akash. And if you've ever lucid dreamed and ended up in a room where there's white pillars, Akashic record. Okay, everybody has the ability to get there. And so you go into someone else and having them teach you astrology is ridiculous because it's all duality. If you don't understand that the miasm, all the miasm complements the glandular gifts. This is the why from the head, but when we actually integrate the shadow, that's when the whole body fills with light. And so my family, I married into a family that was in PTSD, 3 sons, and I created children with this family. And so we blended the 2 branches and created a new tree. And my parent partner and I are responsible for keeping our words, the words that were spoken, not just the piece of paper that means nothing. When you do the life review, it means that you are able to harvest the day every single day because you've been participating in revelation. And revelation is trust. It's making sure that you're not following the no talk rule. And so as I was raising children, if something came up during the day, I reached out to my parent partner, even though his family was upset that I was interrupting him during the slave cycle. But we made all these decisions. We actually provided a major ripple and shift and planted some new seeds for the Embry family for right now. And our sons are born sovereign. They're born sovereign. So one of the things that I've been doing during the alchemy cycle of my own family is I have been going in and sitting with the lost children and doing this because of the near-death experience I had in 1987, and then all the other ones that have happened. I mean, Diana and I had one in Durango where a friend of ours was driving a car and everybody thought the 3 of us were triplets, and she transitioned. So when we get in and we start looking at this spinal connection that water element sisters understand, there is this one flow of electromagnetism, and electromagnetism works through the body because we've got the electro, which is the air, and the magnetism, which is the water. And the water moves back and forth through the membrane, day in, day out, and with every single breath, your heart is pumping in union with this flow of water, but many people have heavy metal toxicity built up around the outside of the membrane. And if that's the case, it's called miasm, and it's related to shock, and it's not random, and there's no shame. But when we do the codex, I'll come in and do one more because I actually have 3 lost children to harvest for the week. And when I say harvest, I'm going to bear witness to them, but I also want you to see how if your family is in an alchemy cycle and you begin to understand that you are revealing the fractal world every day, and you do a few people's code because you understand they've got a fertility, they've got a purpose, and they've got a legacy. And when you do the 3 of those, you'll start to see how rare it is to attract the right people, but that you're doing it every second. Be right back. Bye for now. Okay. You know, I'm used to doing an hour and a half, but my family's asked me to keep things brief, and I've been wanting to come in and read the Codex. And so it's wonderful to start podcasting again. We had a very popular podcast in 2016. And then, everything that happened through that podcast caused us to take a little bit of a break while I went through the next level of vertical integration. And so much of this has to do with being able to put words to what it's like to be an identical twin. This was the most commonly asked question, and people assumed that my twin sister and I are, the same on the inside as the outside, but it's not that way at all. We are mirror image twins. And again, I'm wearing this hat and these glasses because of my sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. I've been teaching a geobiology class, a bow biology class, for a long time. And this is based in vibrational medicine. Okay. And also, here's another really awesome one. If you know about Buckminster Fuller or Tesla, none of the information that they have given has been used properly yet, because we don't need apparatuses to harness energy. We don't. We don't need solar panels. We don't need to harness the wind. All of that is just creating more chaos. And so as we begin to understand 5 elements, we begin to return to nature. But the only way that you can do that is if you shift from the outside in system to the inside out one, which means that you're actually going to start feeling your autonomic nervous system. And as you do, what's happening is your musical instrument, your body, is actually coming back to life. We live in a universe, don't we? Yes, we do. One verse, one song. And so each and every human is part of a hologram. All right? If you've ever seen the heart math images, you can see that the spinal column is the center of the hologram. Just as in the gastrula, in the early stages of embryology, when the clump of cells folds over, that's the gastrula. It's the spine, and it is the hole moving from, all the holes in the head are the antenna. And they all end in the organ systems. There's an excretion pathway for each one of the 5 senses. So when we come to our senses, we're actually coming to our 5 senses. And that means the whole conversation is going to shift from belief, duality, politics, battlefield mentality, where people go away and form tribes because they can't feel their DNA. It's not okay. And so healthcare upgrades every single day. And we have been bringing information, even through these Tesla rings here. And right now we're in the middle of working on the urban clinic, which is the city clinic. And so I'm sitting in the middle of a death zone. And I'm a water element who is super sensitive to epigenetics. And so I'm integrating this stuff, and I'm attracting lost children every day. You might recall during pandemic, I was on the streets in Salida, which is Sin City. And during that time, this flag developed. And some of you look at it and you see a pentagram, but I hope you see a starseed, because this is what the human body is. We're all 5 elements. Everybody has all 5 elements. We just have each a very unique code, which is the spin of the electrons in the atom. It's why we can take DNA and clone things, because once you have the code, you can clone. And so the people who are in the bodies have the power, and especially the ones that understand sovereignty, which means a body full of light. If you call yourself Christian or religious, do you understand that the word church actually originates from circus? Yeah, circles. And so we're actually here to ascend. And that means let the three bodies become light. So this week, on July 10th, I met a lost child, and I've been meeting lost children. First, they were fur babies. Just ask my parents. We were bringing home abandoned kittens, abandoned dogs, and we would wander around the neighborhood and find homes for them. And so even forming a alliance with our local vet here in Littleton, Colorado, Dr. Hicks. He was such an angel. He actually took one of our dachshunds who had a slip disc. I mean, she lost the function of her back legs, and he built her a little wheelchair, and she learned to walk again. It was the most incredible thing. So I, at that point, decided I wanted to become a veterinarian. And my mom said, oh yeah, Donna, I can just imagine what would happen if someone came in with an animal that had been hit by a car. And I went, because I hate the sight of blood. It just, unless it's, me bleeding out, like, a lot of people don't realize that if you move away from using a toothbrush and you start using a water pick, and it's hydrotherapy, so you start getting this water, which water is the kidney element. So the kidney, bladder, and the ears, they all look like kidneys. So the ears look exactly like kidneys, and what sits on the top of the kidneys is the capstone. It's a triangular gland on each one. There's two, and they're called the adrenals. And renal means kidney, so the adrenals. And so this whole water system right here, you'll see it's the circle. And this water system, if you start letting the water flow in the body, it's because the autonomic nervous system, which is connected to the heart and small intestine, and what actually builds the hormones and the neurotransmitters is the liver, right? And over here we have the enzymes. So if you look at these points, this has to do with biochemistry. And here we have water, air, this is touch, water is hearing, and up here we have fire, which has to do with the olfactory bulb and smelling, the sense of smell, okay? The liver is the eyes, and the pancreas, stomach, small intestine, that's the lips. And so when we look at the conception vessel that runs up the body and it ends right here, and then we look at the governor vessel that comes up over the back and it's all over the place and it ends in the top lip, right smack dab in the middle is the digestive system, okay? And down at the other end of the gastrula, where right between the reproductive organs and the anus is the perineum. And that is the root. It's where the conception and governor vessel, this is female, and coming up the back of the body is male, all right? And everybody has both aspects. And when we do the microcosmic orbit or anything else like that, or we don't want to get into tantra and all this crap. You just really want to get into understanding your own autonomic nervous system. This is one of the first things that doctors understand. And so you got the parasympathetic cycle, which starts at 3 a.m. and runs through 3 p.m., okay? And you have to, get rid of daylight savings time because that takes infertility issues to another level. And so each one of these systems are connected to these systems. And when we come in and we do the code, we know that, for example, the the feet are the 0. The 1 is the gonads. Men have an outie and women have an innie. And when we get up to the adrenal glands, still part of the water system, so everything below the solar plexus, it's all water. It's the mercy seat. It's the hips are the Holy Grail. This is what people don't understand. And so when we look at the kidney element, the water element, we're looking at anything below the solar plexus, and everyone has this. Everyone has this. So if you look at ascension, it moves from the feet up, and this is just like vertical integration in child development. So when I studied child development, it helped me to understand why the thymus gland fragments. And we put very specific systems in place for the one-on-one preschool for children to stand in the light cycle while their parents were out marching. But then we had to bring in parent education classes and stuff like that. So when we look at the sine wave, we want to look at your crystalline code. And this ogre-looking guy that I met on Sunday, my God, an ogre. But an ogre named Michael. And so when I talk about elementals, I'm talking about the elementals. So 5 elements, we're going to see the fractal of elementals, okay? And so Shrek, this guy's name was Michael, and his fertility code, which you know has to do with the 28-day fertility cycle, which is, you know, we've got 14 days of estrogen and 14 days of progesterone, and they work right along with the full and the new moon, because the moon regulates the tides. And so any water on the planet in, through, and around us is connected to the tides. And this is basic elements. So he has 6 code because he's born on a Libra, which is super interesting because when you have 6 code, it's about judgment. And anyone that's got 6 code is going to have issues with addiction. Yeah, because it's the pineal gland. And the pineal gland won't be activated until the thymus gland is activated. That's how it works. The phoenix rising works from the feet up. His purpose number, which is the sum total of the digits in his birthday, get this, it's 26/8, you guys. And so you know when we started studying the crystalline codex back at Chautauqua, and we started doing this code just to prove it out, we found that 80% of the healthcare practitioners in the room had 26/8 code. And we now know that 26/8 code is the adrenal glands, which aren't aligned because nobody has information about how to feel their autonomic nervous system. The pineal gland, which isn't open, it's actually calcified. And then the 2 of those add up to 8, which is the crossover point, the pericardium. And so it is the love aspect of the threefold flame, the number 8 is, and it's very, very karmic. But if you have it for a purpose number, you've got to look at your fertility code and your legacy code. So the fertility is how you do the day-to-day, and it's based in your day of birth. The life purpose is the sum total of the digits in your birthday, and that's related to Dan Millman's work, but it's all dual now. And he never put it on the sword and the stone. He didn't do that yet. The legacy code has to do with the written document on the planet. So all words convert to numbers. And when you convert the words to numbers, we end up with the sine wave. And so, for example, my legacy code is 55. And if you take 5 plus 5, that's a 10. That's the alchemist code. And I am Merlin's daughter, Merlin's granddaughter. My grandfather Merlin was born to identical twins, Mary and Marie. And we are the long line of the Templars returning with the crystalline codex. So this big ogre-looking guy, the total in his name is just like my grandmother Woodland. It's 9. All right, so my daughter-in-law and my grandmother who married Merlin, they both have 9 code for a legacy code. So I'll come back and give you more details about this week's unfolding. This is part 3 of the Crystalline Codex disclosure. So this is on beyond all this alien disclosure that people are looking for right now, okay? Because if you understand that the galactic stuff and anything that's happening on the planet is actually reflecting what's going on within the human hologram and the microbiome. Because the microbiome is actually what feeds our brain. And so we've been talking about the Crystalline Codex and receiving basically the entry to the King Arthur games for anyone who's a Templar, who knows that Templars step in to put a temporary system in place when consciousness falls from grace. Once the Templars start burning each other at the stake, we know that we've gone into complete duality. All right? And so we fall all the way into the amnesia, unconscious state, and we have these bloodlines. And these bloodlines are related to a sine wave. And they have to do with genetic code, vibrational frequency. But when you get right down to what that means, it's all light. It's all light. So light differentiates into senses: eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and texture, touch. Did you know that the touch, the skin, is connected to the lungs and the large intestine? And so this little flag that I've been holding up, you'll see this. This is a symbol for embryology. Okay? Embryology. This is a star seed. But what the SS stands for is Scotty and Stephen. It stands for Sovereign Sanctuaries, which is the orphanage system that we have been promising people around the world since 1962, and agreeing to come in to fulfill this life. So we've been talking about the water element and looking at the sword and the stone, and everybody receiving their Arthur code so that you can actually enlighten your spine, which means you have to become sexually mature so that you can keep the children sexually mature. All right? This is the Aquarian age, and every time we get to the age of Aquarius, it has to do with the shins. The shins. And so you're a God being, and we can see the shape of the gods in the sky. When you look at the codex, the round codex, it's related to astrology, cosmology, astronomy, light cycles, black holes, quantum physics, Newtonian physics. It's all 5 elements. And so you have to be able to see the forest and the trees in order to become conscious, because what I'm speaking about is not that complicated. Preschoolers understand it. Okay? So we were talking about the 7-day cycle, 7-day cycle: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Today's Friday. It's Friend Day. It's also the color indigo. And how do we know that? Because we know the rainbow body. We know these are the halos for the organ systems. And there are only 5 paired organ systems related to embryology. And those are related to 5 elements and 5 senses. And so coming to your senses means that we're going to talk about words, hearing, right? We're going to talk about numbers. We're going to talk about numbers because that's all about frequency. It's about light cycles. It's about being able to see the sacred geometry in everything. For example, did you know that the stem of any plant is nourishing to the water? Did you know that? And how do we know that? Well, we know that bone is connected to the germ layer that's connected to the kidneys. That the kidneys regulate the water, but also the minerals. And so the bone structure, just looking at your bone structure, look at mine. I'm a water element. You can see this. And you just have to remember to start seeing it instead of, thinking you don't know. Well, the only way I learned how to fly an airplane was to use the dashboard and to plot a map and to have the North Pole and my course. And when I got off of the course for any reason, then I knew how to yaw back onto the course. I knew how to get back to where I needed to go. And eventually you learn how to hold the course without even thinking about it. But everything that operates on this planet operates through polarity, electromagnetism. And becoming a pilot allowed me to understand even more what it's like to be an identical twin, to talk about the flow of elements. We had to study meteorology. And studying meteorology was not easy. It wasn't, because it was life or death. And fortunately, the books they gave us, I've got them around here somewhere. I had been doing the cloud identification since I was a child. It's just something that we did in Utah and in Colorado. We laid on our back and we looked at the clouds and we saw different shapes appearing. And if you do that long enough and you begin to understand the way the electromagnetic field works, you understand that we're actually participating in forming clouds. Then Slim Sperling comes along from Colorado School of Mines. Morrison, Colorado, was actually raised with the indigenous people in South Dakota. His mom was a school teacher, and he taught us about cloud busting. Have you ever tried this? So there are certain things that we can do, but if you're going to cloud bust, where's that going to go? And this is where people don't think. They don't understand about flow. And so the fastest way to ground this earth is to shift the polarity in your own body so that you're living life from the inside out. So let's go back to these men, these lost men. Sometimes I attract lost girls. I mean, you guys know that I reached out to our sexual research community here in Colorado a few times. And this was during the purification of pandemic. And this is where you were really understanding if people were in the sexual research to get their rocks off or if they were actually here for sovereignty. That's how polarizing it was. And if you are a healthcare practitioner, you would pull out your third notebook so that you can look at the miasma, okay? Miasma is the medical term for the human shadow. And so these lost boys, the theme that I've had is the Catholic Church. This ogre that I met on Sunday had come from church, obese, just obese, and just has the look of the swine, like he eats a lot of pork. And but having the 26.8 code is interesting because it is the female alchemy code. And if you've got that for your life purpose, and so this man's name is Michael. He's a huge ogre. You can watch the previous part of the video. I'll see if I can put this in succession. I actually need someone to come and set the sets up so that I can just start recording this stuff like crazy and disclosing it. But for now, I want to get you focused on the codex because this is on beyond understanding your why. It's actually understanding your 5 elemental makeup and being able to ground your family tree. Because when you do that, we actually start grounding the hologram in a really, really fast way. This is on beyond heart math. It's on beyond Bruce Lipton stuff. It's on beyond anything that the guys have given you so far, okay? Because this is going to come from women who have the water element, and the water it's the flow of wisdom, and it is enlightenment, and we give birth to men. And so those of you cougars who are out there molesting men, it's time for you to understand your decade and to actually step into the sacred secretion cycle, which means that you become sexually mature right here. Okay? Everybody's got a twin flame. And you don't have to be in sexual union to participate in sacred secretion every day. You simply have to start using the circadian clock and letting your children live in it. This isn't up for debate. It isn't. It's the way light cycles work. And so do people think I'm bossy? Yeah. Do I give a shit? No, I don't. I've always represented the light cycle, and there's no way to fake it till you make it. And if you think that you're not the expert of the light cycle and you've sat in one of my classes, even if it's a training for a sales rep, you are responsible for the miasm. Whether you know it or not, you are. And so you're either going to get it now and get your upgrade, or you're going to play it backward at the end of your life when you think you're leaving the negative behind. It just doesn't work that way. So we vertically integrate the water, the negative, with the air to open up the Christ light, which is the solar plexus, okay? And everything flows from the inside out. So when you know the 10 numbers related to the Merlin code, 0's the feet, and then you know the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The crossover point is the 8. That's the infinity. And people don't understand that that isn't just a loop. It isn't. It is ascension. That's what the 8 is. It's serpentine. It's ascending. If you look at the 8th house, it has to do with sexual maturity and transcending death. It's rooted in the 2nd house. And so these are related to the zones on the clitoris, the zones on the apex, the zones of the spine. But we can't even look at the sacred code, the codex, the round part, until you open up the vertical spine. So this man was basically a rapist. And he's a humanitarian. But he has had epilepsy since he was a child, and he's been keeping it under control with prescription drugs. And as I sat and watched what he was ingesting, it was food dyes. He did not want to hear that he could overcome epilepsy. He was chain smoking joints, completely against alcohol, but that's because he had abused it his whole life. And so he doesn't know anything in moderation, because the 26-8 code, you have to come into using things in moderation. And the only way you can do that is to understand your own elemental pulse without dividing on anyone. This is a divining rod, not a dividing rod. Okay, there's a very distinct difference. Again, I'm wearing a hat and sunglasses because I had 42 stitches down the back of my head. Okay, and I actually learned how to set up homes for people who have children who play sports. If you've been in car accidents, if there's a lot of sibling rivalry, then likely you have had near-death experiences to where people are going to be sensitive to the electromagnetic field, which means the invisible sine wave that's moving in plain sight. Okay, this is all part of nature play. We teach you how to do this. The ogre was Sunday, okay? On Wednesday, I met a Park County orphan, and he's born on, interestingly enough, again, it's a Libra, 10/11/1962. So he's born the same year as my sister and I. And if you look at the ogre, if you look at his code, I'm actually, because his fertility is the 6th, we're working through Michael Stamper with that code. And anyone that is born on a number that adds up to 6, we're also working on that code. So anyone born the 24th, so that would be Rich Golker. Did he come up this week? He sure did. I was able to integrate some real pain relative to that connection, and the realization of what he was doing. But it's also connected to the lead doctor that I brought to Colorado who was setting up the mountain clinic, and then he revealed that he wasn't following anything. So he got fired immediately. That's another 24. The 26/8, this is my mom. I went over again. Okay, I'm just going to stick on this weekly harvest from July 10th to July 16th, 2022. All right? As I mentioned, since my family has been going through the alchemy cycle of integrating the miasm, I have been sitting with people in first coffee shops and on the streets, and then the homeless people, and then, in the hospital. Obviously, I did that right in 2015 at the beginning, when I went and sat in the hospital with a crippled man who was screaming at everyone. And I just got everybody, calmed down so that they could actually listen to what was going on. And I was able to introduce the microbiome to a group of functional medicine doctors that were working at St. Joe's. So that was quite a score. Then we started integrating the medical marijuana because he actually needed it for his pain. He was using it. But we got into testing out the Rick Simpson oil, but done in the clean way that my sons do it. And that was transformative. If you understand medical marijuana and you look at it through the lens of an herbalist, which we all should be, we've all been working with the FDA for a very, very long time, and we know how to look at scientific studies. We know how to look at the intention behind things. And all you have to do is lean in a little bit to prohibition to begin to understand that there was information that was withheld about people needing to understand ferments. The ferments, even mushrooms. But looking at this whole line of the microbiome that actually helps to break down the radiation toxicity that we all have from splitting atoms. When that happens, it really affects Pluto, plutonium, uranium, and thus that affects our mitochondria. More deeply than anything, it affects our sex organs. And if you look at the shape of a mushroom cloud, it is literally the spine and the head. But it has to be rooted in soil. And so as we begin to look at revealing the codex here, as I mentioned on Sunday, I met an ogre man, an obese man, who had the birthday of October 6th, 2022. And if we go in and look at the 3 parts to the vertical code, you can begin to see the family members that you are grounding through the people that you're pulling into your practice. It's all connected, because when we look at these little strips of code, we're looking at genetic patterns. We're looking at miasma. We're looking at genes. It's all related to the electromagnetic sine wave that is behind all these patterns. So for every dimension, there's also a veil. And the veils follow the miasma. So we have shame, blame, guilt, manipulation, control, outcasting, and death. Okay? The hypothalamus, when it's focused outward, this is the 7th miasm related to this most recent pandemic. We know that every single pandemic is the result of mass shock. We know that because we have the Unified Medicine Institute, which basically brings together all the research that validates the light body. And so bioenergetic is what we are. We're biology and energy. But you don't want someone, erasing frequencies on you. You don't want that. If you can't feel the pressure, if you can't feel the pain, you can't integrate it. So no pain, no gain. If you think it's about running around eating a certain diet so that you can make a certain body, your body is designed to express from the inside out and to need a certain diet. But it needs to be full of the phenolics. You guys all remember the phenolics from the third college. That has to do with the colors of food. And that's where the real minerals related to the liver come from. It's not from metals. It's not from, minerals made from crystals. It's not. Those heavy metals are connected to the lungs and the large intestine. And so when you look at the ionic trace minerals that we were giving to people back before 2012, they needed them then. Now they need the plant-based ones. But how are you going to know if you can't even remember the basic rainbow foods are connected to the phenolics, which terpenes are a branch of phenolics? And so when we look at medical marijuana, some of it has to be ingested, some of it needs to be smoked, and some of it needs to be applied topically because it's an essential nutrient. It's an essential nutrient. All you have to do is look at the rubric through the eyes of a master herbalist and to square it to embryology so that you understand what it is. We know that the flow of water is opened through green plants. But what about the resins? Who remembers what the resins do? Who remembers what gugolipid is? It actually resets the fat body. We have given people the core gugolipid long-term with Circulopath for them to keep their cholesterol under control so that they could come off cholesterol drugs. But that was a temporary measure. And now we need to actually use the medical marijuana, use the psychedelic plants to rebuild the neurotransmitters for good. Because the additives, paraquat, the pesticides and herbicides all have a metal base. And so those get built up in the liver, and that's where you have high cholesterol. This is the causal chain. It has nothing to do with belief system. It has to do with what we see over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in clinics and why it works that way. It's because the body is a flow system. It's made up of 5 elements. And so when we look at your elemental code, we're going to look at what you're pulling in through a 7-day cycle. And I pulled in an ogre on Sunday, who is actually someone who doesn't trust chemistry at all. He misuses women. He rapes them. He's in competition with men and women. And he's a humanitarian, but by way of the gonads and the pericardium is how he opens up his brain and his spine. And he is so toxic from all of the metals and chemicals and everything that he's got sitting in. And all you have to do is smell someone's armpit. And, they're wearing this smelling sauce that is, again, full of metals and chemicals. It's actually going to make them dumber. And it's not going to contribute to the detoxification of heavy metals that allow people to shift. So the fastest way to open the endoderm is through the circadian clock, letting the body heat above 100 degrees with humidity at the same time. And in order to do this, you want to just plan on an hour and a half and get into a hot yoga room or create one in your home to where you can actually let go of all of the gas in your blood by doing this very specific breathing that opens up the atlas. And then you're going to balance out the 2 hemispheres of your brain by doing balancing poses. And you're going to go to the mat. You're going to do all kinds of twists, and you're going to do whatever you can. You're going to listen to your pain, and you're going to only push it as far as your body can go. The nice thing about this 90 minutes of hot yoga is you spend a lot of time in Shavasana, which means that you're on your back letting it settle. for a minute at a time. And so you can actually let your breath settle, because a lot of people who have anxiety are actually breathing too much. Breathing too much. And so we got to open up the spine. I used to teach the alternate breath breathing. And if you get on social media and just start following this stuff that these people who haven't been in clinical practice are giving you, that's not the 4 parts to the learning process. It isn't. It's not. You don't really understand how something works until you put it through the test of seeing it on large bodies of people. And that's when you know, beyond the shadow of a doubt. So on Wednesday, I pulled in a man who's a Catholic. He's Italian and Croatian. And his birthday, again, another Libra, 10/11. Now this is Victoria Lewis's birthday, for those of you that know Victoria from Boulder, 1962. So if you look at 1962, this is interesting, because when we looked at Michael's code, who is the ogre, he's born, he's got the 26/8 code, but his legacy is 108, which actually is a 09. So 1 down to the feet, to the pericardium, opens up the feet and then the spine. Okay, so that's pretty significant. But now we come in and look at Gerald's code, and we see that he's born in 1962. So if you code that out, 1 + 9 + 6 + 2, it's 18. So do you see the 1 and the 8 again? And so we have the same code appearing through this next man, but his 1962 code matches me and my sister, Nassim Haramein. There's a whole bunch of geniuses born in 1962, because it's sovereignty. It's bringing the humanitarian code through sex and awareness of sex. And so if we code out, if we look at Gerald's fertility code beyond his birth year, he's an 11. He's an 11, which is exactly what my sister is. My older sister, Michelle, is a 20. And so an 11 is 1 + 1 = 02. And so an 11 is actually all about the gonads. So you see 11 everywhere, it's dick fighting. And especially if things aren't opened up, but it codes out to where it's, double 11, like ego, me. And then it goes to the feet and cracks open the adrenal glands. Well, if there isn't women who are holding that circadian clock, there surely aren't going to be any men that are going to be able to do it. It gets more interesting, because if you add his digits together and get his purpose, it's 21, which is the truth number. It's adrenals, gonads, crack open the solar plexus. And so it's all sexual stuff. And his legacy is exactly like my youngest son and my twin sister, okay? It's 85, which is the pericardium via the throat. Open up the 13. There's the 13, you guys. So there's the big clue. Anyone that's got 4, 9, or 8 legacy, they're the second wave. They're not going to be amplified. And so this man has been in and out of jail for DUIs. He's lost his children. He's lost his job. He's recreated things. And now he considers himself a sexual healer, which is so flippin' stupid. But he's a lost boy, and I don't mean to call him stupid, but, when I start talking about the codex, he doesn't want to talk about numbers. He told me that right open. He thinks he's got to carry this cross for the Lord, that he's got to tote this along, and it's bullshit. It's bullshit. So the one that came on Thursday, which has to do with this, is a John Matthew, who has, he's 28, born on the 28th, which is 10 code. It's the alchemist code for his fertility. This is interesting because his life purpose is like my son's and Claire's. This 3407, which is also the code of my surname. And His legacy code is 79, which is a 16, which is 7. And so this man, when I began speaking with him, he has been doing transcendental meditation since a child. He understands Edgar Cayce. He actually wants to hold my back for the codex. All right? And so this is how we build up to it all week long. Love you guys. Bye for now. He's a Cancer.